Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Whitley Jane, your host. And this week we have a very special guest. I'm so excited because I have been bringing back our segment, Get Inspired. And this is pretty much where I bring on real people and sharing their real stories to help you get inspired in your journey. And we have Dave Morrison here, who is a singer, songwriter, company founder, and tech sales industry professional. And so he is here. We're going to talk about his story. We're going to talk a little bit about all the things that he is up to. But more importantly, what we're going to do is really touch on his journey between navigating, work life, his passion for singing, songwriting, where he is with that, and to hopefully leave you inspired with you in your journey and what you're doing to stepping into your purpose and helping you along the way. And so thanks again so much, Dave. Welcome to the channel. And so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Billy. That was an amazing introduction. Absolutely loved it. I guess I can give you a little intro of myself. So I'm from Nova Scotia originally, born and raised. Small town is called Truro, Nova Scotia, about an hour out of Halifax, if anybody's been, any of your listeners. But initially music was my love and my want. That's what I wanted to get into. And so I left Truro and I moved to Toronto, studied jazz guitar, was on scholarship at Humber College, and was admitted into something called the Enrich program that they have there, which is for higher level students before going to Berkeley College of Music for a year, and then moving to Los Angeles before moving back to Toronto. When the pandemic hit, that's when I founded my company. And in balancing the music industry and my pursuance of becoming a star in the music industry, and the financial side, that's when I started coming up with different ways of attaining that goal. So be it, founding the company, working different jobs, moving into sales. I eventually found my success, which I'm sure we'll touch on a little bit more, in the tech sales industry, which is fully remote and gives me full geographical freedom. So that's where I'm at today.
Love that. And thanks so much for sharing and giving the audience a little more of a taste of where you're at and how you got to where you are. One big question that I have for you that we really want to kick things off with, Dave, is how did you know that music was your thing? How did you know that that was going to become part of your path to where you are today? And the reason why I want to ask this is I know that there are so many folks out there, especially our viewers, who are in sort of this transition stage where they are looking to either find their path, find their calling, their purpose. And perhaps there are even a lot out there who actually know exactly what it is that they want to pursue. And, so they're going through that journey of, learning how to pursue it and juggling this thing called life. So I really want to just ask that question. How did you know that music was going to be your path?
I love that. I'll give it a two-part answer. Music was always something that was in my life, was integrated. I grew up in a musical household. My mom, piano player, all my sisters, all five of them played piano growing up. All my three brothers played guitar. My dad would sing at the local Blueberry Festival. And so it was just ingrained in me, you know what I mean? But it wasn't until I got to a certain point in my career that I knew what I wanted to do in music. So, I went into jazz guitar performance at Humber and then Berkeley, and you meet a lot of people, you get a bunch of connections, you do a bunch of stuff. It's pretty cool. But it isn't until, in my story, when I got to Los Angeles, where I was like, what am I doing? Where do I want to go? Do I want to be a performing artist? Do I want to be a session musician? Or do I want to be a solo artist? And that's kind of when I started to make the switch. And at that point, you have to get into branding, understanding who you are as an individual. Difficult thing that I found for myself and a lot of other artists similar to myself is that if you're a jazz artist, or if you're a multi-instrumentalist, or even if you play just the guitar, just the piano, or you just sing, you could be playing around with a bunch of different genres. I think it's kind of the tendrils of this statement extend into a bunch of different subjects. But just staying within music for a second, it's important to decide on one pure direction, at least for the first couple steps of the career. And once you've had success in that, you can start to branch out. But for me, that was the most difficult thing. And to answer your question, kind of a big circle, music was always a part of my life, and that's kind of how it ingrained itself deeply into myself, for sure.
That's fantastic, Dave. And love how you honed in on, you know, really getting clear on one thing first and putting your focus and your energy into that so that you can get more clear as you go. So what piece of advice would you add to that for somebody who may not, know if maybe know what that path is for them? We've got so many people out there who are looking to maybe break into becoming a speaker, becoming a coach, maybe being able to just impact others in a bigger way with some of their gifts. And for you, it's through your music. What would be a piece of advice that you could add to that for folks who are new on the path, just trying to get those pieces of clarity?
I think clarity comes when you're pulled in the direction of whatever it is that calls you. And so instead of trying to force anything, you really have to allow yourself to open up to the possibility of it being there. So whatever your calling is, it's there somewhere. It's kind of hidden behind the writings on the walls. It's hidden in the shadows somewhere. And so instead of sprinting towards directions that, might not be the right place for you, slowly allowing yourself to move into that warm water, it'll come to you. And so what I encourage for, your listeners is think of any hobbies that you've gotten into. As an example. Okay, so for me, I play this video game online that I really like. And there was no part of me that was like, I want to play this video game and I know I'm going to get really good at it. I just one day was looking online at different video games that might be fun to play. And, here's one, I'll try it out. And I tried it out. I started playing. I kept practicing. Now I'm like one of the top ranked in the world at this ridiculous video game, but it's just because I could keep going with it and keep enjoying it. So in the context of music, for this same idea, music was something that I was lucky enough on the early stages of my life to be surrounded by, so it could begin to integrate itself into my life in a very kind of whispery, like in the shadows, again, warm water manner. But I'm still going to come to the point in my career, like I did, of that crossroads. Where do I want to go with this? But until you get acquainted with the craft itself, you're not going to have any clarity of where you want to go. So all the most successful people say it, fail first, just start, right? And even though those are very, very simple statements, when you actually live them out, you'll see how profound they are and how they integrate into your life. And so if you want to try something new, if you're interested in something new, that's the first indication that it might be the right direction for you to go. If you have that small interest in music, if you have that small interest in business, if you have that small interest in sales, if you have that small interest in self-development, in public speaking, in podcasts, in whatever it might be, there's already something in that that's calling you. So there's a whole road that you could take that would bring you to the most developed version of yourself that's doing that every day as either your mode of employment or your lifestyle. So nurturing that, very gently growing it like a plant and not really trying to, do it and kicking yourself every time it doesn't work, allowing yourself to ease into it, I think is the best way. And important to remember, for sure, for all of us, when we're doing our passions, it can be difficult not to kick ourselves when it doesn't go perfectly. And so remembering that it's going to happen, you're human, everybody does it. The best people in the world at this thing that you want to do, they have their issues too. So we're all going to have good days, bad days, but moving forward progressively, do it every day as much as you can, or once a week, or whenever your schedule allows. Keep the consistency up, and then you will get to a place where you can make that decision if it is something that you want to integrate into your life at a very high level.
That was so beautifully and well said, Dave. Couldn't have said it better myself. I think that there were so many gems in everything that you just shared that I'm going to try to pull some of those out to have you elaborate on them. And the first thing that comes to mind is really allowing yourself to surrender to that journey and just thinking of it as it being more of a marathon and not a sprint, not expecting to just have it all figured out overnight, not expecting to have overnight success, but allowing yourself to just take one step and put one foot in front of the other type of approach, and allowing yourself to be open to opportunities in the same time, because as you do that, you get clearer. And as opportunities present themselves, you're then able to go a little further and take more steps that bring the picture clearer to you and essentially give you more information in terms of what you need in order to take more action along that journey. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, definitely. I think also, to add something to that, reducing the friction between yourself and what it is that you know that you want to do. So for us as people, we're wired to go the easiest route. That's why people, if they're in the far left lane and they have to make a right turn, they're going to go all across traffic instead of going up one more block. People are going to offer the ice cream instead of the good food. They're going to do fast food instead of cooking. And so accepting that about ourselves, instead of saying, oh my gosh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, forgiving ourselves, taking that one step, just like you said, that first step, and recognizing, hey, look, I'm already going to be pre-programmed to go for the easiest route. This is something new that I'm implementing in my life, even if it isn't the easiest thing in the world. Let me reduce as much friction between me and this action that I want to perform as I can, so as to close the gap. And then I'll find that I enter into it again. Where we want to get is that warm water, right? And then I'll enter into it just like that. And then these thoughts, these feelings, these directions can start to come to me, and then I can really get moving. Then you have a real chance of blasting off.
The other thing that I love about that, Dave, is what you said about essentially testing the waters and allowing yourself to hone in on your skills and really developing that craft of whatever it is that you want to pursue, and allowing your job or work or hobbies or volunteer work even to complement that, right? And allow that to build your character, to build your skills, and to allow you to build that craft. And I think what's really interesting is when we look at our journey, when we look at our history and our experiences, when you are pursuing something, you always seem to end up doing things that really do build your character, that really do enhance your skill set. And I know we're going to get a little more into this in terms of where you're at and what you're doing and how you juggle everything and balance work and life. And I think that's going to be really helpful and insightful to our viewers today. But I really love that, because kind of having an aha moment even here for myself in terms of when I think back to all the things that I have done and how it's really developed me to go to the next step. And as you continue to be open to the opportunities and you follow that path, the more you develop, the more that it adds to where you're going, right? I want to go back to the part where you talked about being open to opportunities, because you said you grew up in a small town, Truro, Nova Scotia, and then you moved to Toronto, and then you lived in LA for some time, and now you're back in Toronto. But was that part of you being open to opportunities? And if so, I know that there's going to be tons of viewers out there who are also going to be on the fence of, how do I know if I need to move? How do I know if I've outgrown my environment? How do I know if I need to take a chance and do something differently to help bring me closer to my dreams or my goals? Can you share a little bit about that and what that was like for you?
For sure. If you ever go to Truro, beautiful small town. And we have some great venues. We've got the band shell in Victoria Park. We've got the Marigold Center. And I played those. And then we've got Roadside Willies. I played that. And then, we've got CEC, which is, college. And I played that. High school. And I played that. And, but those are the biggest stages that we have in our town. And while they're great, I always had this ear for, I was listening to Justin Timberlake, to Kanye West. I was listening to, Justin Bieber. And then in the newer age, I started listening to guys like Lucky Day, like Jivion. And my ear was always different from a lot of what was in my town, which was like country music and stuff like this. The tough thing about when you're starting out And a lot of people don't think they're starting out when they've been in the game for however many years. But the reality is that you may still be starting out. Take a look at your environment, take a look at where you're at, and you might be in a bubble. And for me, the issue was that I was in a bubble. And the problem with that is that you don't realize it because that's all you know. In Truro, at least in my family, I grew up below the poverty level, and we didn't take big trips. We would drive to local amusement parks. I visited my aunt in Montreal for the first time, I believe, when I was in my teens. And that was a massive city for me. Up until that point, the big city for me was Halifax, Nova Scotia. So ideally, you're able to, again, this calling, that greater part of you that realizes that there's something beyond yourself that is out there, is your guiding light. Because if nothing else, if everything that's around you is not aligning with that higher calling, then at least you have that higher calling. And a great quote that I saw was, "It's good to be lost insofar as you're lost in the right direction." And for me, a lot of my life, I was lost in the right direction. And the feeling was, I have to go out and be in different places. Now, in the music industry these days, you don't have to be in different places. You know, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, these kinds of things can allow people to have success remotely, certainly. But in my case, not having known too much about the music industry growing up, I was like, I got to be where the opportunities are. I got to go to the big city. I initially thought that LA was my be all end all. I was like, I need to go to, Toronto was my first step, big city, run around, make my connections. Berkeley, I gained the name Mr. Hollywood, is what they used to call me in Berkeley, because I would hardly even go to my classes. I'd hang out in the cafeteria for 4 to 6 hours a day. And I would cycle through groups of friends that would come in and sit at the table with me and then go off. And then I was talking to labels. I was playing shows. I was working with people that were getting flown out to LA every weekend. And then when I went to LA, I did everything. I busked on the Santa Monica Pier. I auditioned for America's Got Talent, American Idol. I met with the manager of YouTube Space Los Angeles to try and get linked up there, who was a connection of a friend that I had. And then I got myself an agent, like everything. I linked up with a modeling company, an acting company. I did a bunch of collabs. But why I'm saying all this is because I went through all of that so that your listeners don't have to. Depending on the industry that you want to get into, it's important to do your research. And for the majority of industries, you can speak with people that are further along down the road than you are. And I'll get into the music industry in a second. For business, you can speak to people that have established their own businesses. You can read books from people that have established their own businesses. If you want to get into real estate, if you want to get into podcasting, these are all avenues in which you can either talk to people that are having success or had success in these industries, and it will apply to what you're doing current day. Mentors are massive. And I really want to make that clear, because for myself, in the music industry, there's a lot of charlatans, and a lot of times you get mentors that lead you down paths that they don't fully understand, but you don't know anything at all. So you don't know any better. So you can get led in different directions. Bit of a different approach with the music industry, and I'll get to that in a second. But as far as moving around, for the individuals that are listening, you can move around in terms of up here, and you can move around in terms of out there. And depending on your industry, it'll differ. For business, with Tired Boy Productions, it was important for me to be in a place where music videos were of high demand. Toronto was that place, especially during the pandemic. And that's why I saw a lot of success and then was able to get the clients that I did. That would have never worked in Truro. It wouldn't have worked as well in LA because it's a competitive market. It wouldn't have worked as well in Boston because all the majority of the artists that I knew in Boston were all students. They didn't have the money to be able to pay for that kind of thing. So I knew my market. I knew where to place myself. That was a very simple answer. When it comes to social media and music, you can look stuff up online till the day is long. And 99% of the stuff that you're going to find isn't going to be what you need to go off of, partially because everybody and their uncle has a channel that's dedicated towards telling people what to do with their music careers, but they haven't had success themselves. So what's important to look at is what's working now. You know, I had a professor in Berkeley that taught us music business, and he would continuously get corrected in class by the students because what he was telling us was outdated, and he was teaching us from a book, and we're all on our smartphones, right, about music business. And he's saying, well, you need to make emailing lists and this and that, and everybody's like, everything's done on Instagram now. Like that's what's happening. So if you go online as an artist or as an entertainer or as somebody that's trying to make it in social media, I always found, and what I found now in these past couple of years, and this is where I found the most amount of success, is use yourself as the case study. What are you liking? What are you saving? What are you scrolling past? And what are you staying on? This will give you a lot of indications in terms of the mental exploration of what is working for you as a consumer. What is a viral video for you as a consumer? What is an interesting video or relatable video, which is, by the way, a lot of what's going on TikTok is relatable videos. And I think that's really, really important. And that can start to lay your foundation. So to answer your question in a sentence, should people move around? You can, and you might be able to get some good connections. And for a lot of industries, that's really important. But specifically for music and the entertainment industry, you can do a lot of the stuff yourself at home, but the research has to be done intelligently and thoroughly. And I would certainly say to use yourself as a case study and see what's working for you, more than checking in with all these gurus of how to have success.
Yeah, thanks so much for that really detailed answer as well, Dave. I think that going back to your point of you emphasize, get yourself a mentor who has either had success or shown success in the area of that. And so I think that that's so important, is having mentors. And if you could give anyone advice in terms of how do you actually go out and find yourself a mentor? How do you actually know if a person is legit? And then to the second point, say if somebody is legit and they have had success, there's a lot of fears that come up for people. And I was listening to you, naming off all the things that you did. I'm like thinking, how did you overcome the fear? How did you overcome the negative self-talk that got in the way at times, right? So that's another thing too that I want to ask. But going back to reaching out and finding those mentors, yeah, I think that's actually a better segue into going into how do you overcome the fear and the self-doubt to doing these things?
Okay, so since those are two such massive questions, negative self-talk and addressing that and finding mentors, why don't we do this? Why don't I go off one first? And then if you could ask me the second part of that, whatever you want me to answer afterwards, again, I'd love that. So what do we want to start with? Negative self-talk or mentors?
Yeah, let's talk about negative self-talk first.
Okay. As an artist, this is my specialty, negative self-talk. I've had this, if you're an artist at any degree, or an entrepreneur, a lot of what you'll find is that negative self-talk kicks in for some people all the time. And for me, I went down a massive rabbit hole with it. And a lot of it comes down to what are your pillars, right? What are your undeniables, right? So at the end of the day, if I start questioning myself, am I a good artist? Should I even be doing this? Should I be pursuing this? There's no return on that. Like, what's going on here? I have pillars in my life that prevent me from going down rabbit holes that can stop me from pursuing my passion at all, right? So that's where I see a lot of downfall with so many of my peers, so many people in the industry that I've seen, they stop. And like you touched on before, so much of it is about that consistency. This is an accumulation of years. It's a marathon. I've been in the music industry for, I can't even count how many years. And my biggest successes are just starting to come now. I've had big successes before, but things are about to get to a whole new level for me. And that came with staying in it, because these opportunities will come out of nowhere. You'll learn stuff on a whim, but you have to allow the space and the time for it. And you have to allow yourself to be in the best possible headspace for it. So one thing that I do that I really like to do is this. Every Sunday, I take the day. Okay. And I write out what's working, what's not working, how I feel about myself. And I write down every one of the concerns that I have. So I don't know. I'm worried about that one time in my life, it was not making enough money. I'm worried about not having enough songs. I'm worried about not having, I don't know, enough content for my social media page. Those are three great ones, right? And I think a lot of people have those same issues. So immediately under that, I would write, okay, if you're worried about not having enough money, simple answer, find a job that gets you enough money. So right now, as far as Canadian music labels are concerned, you get signed on with a Canadian music label. What you get, 30, 40K, something like that. Sometimes the numbers differ, but a lot of times that'll be a record advance. And if you get a job that pays you 50, 60K, you're making up to 20, sometimes $30,000 more than any other artist that's going to be in your category. If you can balance that job with your life, then you're getting to a really good place. So for me, in my position, that main concern, I'm not making enough money, wound up being a whole journey that allowed me to get to the place where I have a job that allows me freedom geographically, freedom in terms of my time. I work when I want, I do it kind of how I want. And from there, I can also create my own schedule. And then all the money that I need to be able to have success in music. So those were my three criteria for that, right? But that all originated with that question. Now, when I asked that question, or I brought up that concern of myself, it's so important for me to come at it from a non-judgmental perspective. And that can be so hard for people. So I posed the question, what is the benefit of being negatively judgmental of yourself for something that you know needs to get done? So let me break that down for you. Okay, I need to wash the dishes today, but I feel bad about it. I feel guilty for not doing it. Okay. If I reason that out, I find that the guilt is not something that is productive towards my end goal. I don't need it in this equation. And so I just put it aside and I just go to the task. That can be really tough, but that's personally what I need to do to have that completed. And I find a lot of people at some of these higher levels, they do that. A lot of the people that I know that are very wealthy, they do that. And part of the reason that that works so well for them is because they can put aside how they feel about something they know they need to do, and they can just do the work. So everybody knows how to get famous, just like everybody knows how to lose weight, but how many people are doing it? Right? So it's you know what you got to do and you do it. Now, the other side of that coin is, I want to go eat some ice cream at 3 a.m, a whole pint of ice cream at 3 a.m. I feel guilty about that. That's a good guilt that you should feel, and then you shouldn't do that. You know what I'm talking about? So it's like, there are some instances where the guilt comes up, and then that prevents you from doing something that you would then after regret. So a good ask is, after I complete this, whatever it is that I'm thinking of doing, will I feel accomplishment or regret? And front loading a lot of the work is incredibly good for success. So think of yourself like a friend that you're helping instead of thinking of yourself as yourself. So my girlfriend, as an example, we live together, and sometimes the dishes will be sitting there all day. And then she's going to come home at 5:30. Oh my gosh, I got to get the dishes done. So what I've started doing in my life over the past year or so that's really been helpful, is treating myself the same way. I want Dave's next 2 days to be free. Let me do all the work for him now, so that later he has more time. And inevitably what happens is that more time becomes a lot more productive, and I can do so many more things that progress me on my journey. As far as the negative self-talk is concerned, the pillars are very, very important. To come back to this idea, the Sunday thing, awesome. List it out, right? Even if you don't do it perfect, start it. And then you'll have something down. It's like talking to a therapist. Get your ideas on paper so they're not circulating around, so that you can have that space so that those good ideas can flow in. That's at the very least, have them. Have a routine. Another thing that is non-negotiable. What time are you getting up? What time are you going to bed? What are you eating? Diet is massive, right? If you start to line these things up, sure, you've got a job, sure, you've got financial commitments, familial commitments, you've got, relationship commitments, you've got all these commitments, cool. But what are your non-negotiables that's going to keep you accountable for yourself? Because that's the person that is valuable in your life above everything else. That's all you can be accountable for. Even if you've got kids, even if you've got a husband, even if you've got a partner, at the end of the day, if you're not taking care of yourself first, then how are you going to be able to benefit anybody else? So my progression on that, again, and this is a whole massive topic of how I've developed it over the years, but to kind of distill it as much as I can, I don't approach it from a religious perspective or a manifestation perspective as much as I do a logical perspective. And I personally rely on things I find to be extremely solid. So finding out how people work, humans work, allowed me to find out what happens to me when I feel unmotivated, when I feel depressed, when I feel uninspired, when I feel like procrastinating. Finding out what the human psyche does has allowed me to understand mine better. Finding out what sleep cycles do has allowed me to influence mine more, and has actually made me want to do it instead of just thinking that I'm the issue, right? So on this journey, paramount, if there's one thing I can leave your listeners with, it's you are the machine that creates this outcome for you. You can see that top version of yourself. It's there. If there's a billion pathways, there's probably thousands, but let's just fixate on one that's there for you. That multi-millionaire, traveling around the world, public speaking, or entrepreneur or artist or whatever it is that you want to be, that is in your future. And the path towards that is your golden path. And in order to travel on your golden path, there will be a lot of doubt. There will be a lot of fear. There will be a lot of misinformation that's brought up, but there will also be a lot of wins, a lot of confidence, a lot of self-building. So in order to have the most amount of success for that and provide the best bedrock, the best soil for that path to grow on, because that's how it grows, is to create those pillars that will then give you a foundation that cannot be shaken. Because that is really what happens to everybody on this. And I really want people to understand this. Everybody falls off the path. If you can just make a solid foundation that cannot be shaken, you have the best possible potential of then growing there. Check in with yourself, write down where you want to be, write down how you're getting there. And if nothing else comes to you, you'll still be moving on that path. And that's what I have to say about that.
That is amazing. Again, like just so many diamonds here that Dave is dropping today. I think that you really hit the nail on the head when you talked about building that solid foundation. You have to have a solid foundation when you're building anything, right? And I think, again, just shedding the light on the fact that you talk about really building yourself, building up you as a character and working on yourself mentally, physically, even spiritually, to becoming that person that you are becoming, right? Stepping into. And I think that's where you're talking about building this solid foundation, because everything else, everything else almost doesn't matter, or it's irrelevant, or you could possibly attain it, but if your character is not built to the point of being able to handle what comes your way, your foundation is off. You're gonna be rocky, you're gonna lose it, you're gonna fall off, kind of thing, right?
Well, you couldn't be more right. I think that if you imagine that end person you want to become, if you don't know how to get the, all the material aspects of that, the closest you can get is to facilitate the mental aspect of that. And once you facilitate that, you have such a good chance of getting there and becoming that person, because you'll already be that person, but you just won't have all the cars, the money, the flights, the private jet, like all this kind of, the house, whatever. But you will have the mindset of that person, the unshakable mindset. And simply enough, I think, I've worked with managers, I've worked with labels, I've headlined massive shows. I've done a lot of stuff with a lot of great companies. But one of the most valuable things, if not more valuable than the majority of those things, I would certainly say is a check-in where you're looking at where you are and you're deciding what the next couple of steps will be. So constant distillation of the information that you already have, and then game plan towards the next couple steps. So assessment, appreciation, and strategy. And then from there, if you do that consistently, you're unshakable. You cannot be stopped. Because if everything goes wrong in a week, you still have your Sunday, or whichever day it is for you. You still have your Sunday where you sit down with your note and paper and you write out, okay, that sucked, but here are all the things I'm thankful for. Here are all the things that are working. All right, now let's get into where I'm at and where I want to go, and how I'm going to get there. What's working, what's not, what's the strategy? And then even if you're just doing that by yourself, that is a world of value that will take you to where you want to go.
I love that. I love these 4 pillars that you talk about, and having this, this weekly Sunday check-in with yourself to really just have that check-in and to review and reassess, all of the things that you're working on. And one thing too, I wanted to highlight is so many people get so caught up in the destination versus actually focusing on the journey and the step-by-steps that it takes of getting there, and really enjoying the journey and allowing yourself to evolve and up level in that process. I know that we wanted to talk about work-life balance and, balancing work and balancing your passions. And we've covered a lot of really great stuff today, Dave. I think that you gave the viewers so much more value in just under this hour. But if we could give any advice to anyone out there who maybe in this fork in the road where they are having to decide, do I go get the 9 to 5? Do I keep the 9 to 5? Do I go all in into this thing? Or if I have to do it, how can I possibly keep up and do both? Can you give a little advice on that and just share a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, for sure. So I think this is going to tie well together. I'm living proof that the Sunday check-ins work. Okay, so call it whatever you want, call it however you want. I was in a place where I was surrounded by people that are incredible people, but none of them knew anything about the music industry. And none of them were at any kind of level that I needed to get to. I never got a mentor in the music industry until way later in my career, but it was all a cause of me taking steps, calculated strategic steps towards what I thought I wanted. And then every step that I took, it got a little bit more refined, a little bit more refined, a little bit more refined. So initially I made the effort to blast off in music. You find out pretty quickly that there's not a lot of money, specifically in the Canadian music industry. But the difficulty is that if you go to America, then there's a massive amount of competition. So at the grassroots level of the music industry, even for me as a top jazz musician, is what I'm studied in. Very, very difficult. And I know, so I can name off names all day of people that were at much higher levels than me in terms of the jazz industry, or the music industry, that were touring with headlining artists. that opted for moving towards a 9-to-5 job because they didn't like the inconsistency or the unpredictability and stuff like that. So on my journey, it was a constant process of, okay, this is the goal. Let me check in. When I got to a certain point, the answer for my check-in was, what do I need? I need more solidity in who I am as an artist. That's what I needed in LA. That was the big eureka moment. Oh my gosh. I wasn't even thinking about money. I was slowly running out of my money. I was busking at the Santa Monica Pier. I was, doing a couple side gigs here and there, whatever. Burning through my savings. Wasn't really making any money in the US. Maybe here and there people would help me out, but I was looking for artistic clarity because at that point I had been in the music industry for a significant amount of years. And I needed to find my journey, my passion, who I was as an individual to have my ultimate success. That was my main refinement. And I just had to deal with that. I passed that. And then I moved back to Canada where there was more opportunities for me. I had way more connections. I had way more things on the horizon. Part of the reason I moved back to Canada, though, was because I got a job as a personal trainer. And when I got that job, I was like, okay, here we go. This job is make my own schedule. It's I can work it at any hour. I'll get my money. I can dump that back into music. It's perfect. That didn't work at all. I was getting up at 5 a.m, finishing work at 1 p.m. I thought I'd have the rest of the day, but the rest of the day I was just tired. So I'd be distracted. And then at the end of the day, I'd go to bed at 2, 3 in because that's just how I went to sleep. And I'd do it all over again. I was massively unproductive. I was depressed. I was anxiety ridden. Everything was wrong. And so I said, okay, here's my check-in, right? Let's do the check-in again. What's working, what's not? Well, I've got my artistic sound. I've got my confidence on stage. Okay. I've got some money that's going towards my music. So that's all working, but this schedule is killing me. So the schedule has to change. I still need a job, but the schedule has to change. All right, I start working in the service industry, bartending, serving, busing, porting. I worked security for a number of years. All right, okay, now I can just punch in, punch out. I'm getting paid my checks. I don't have to make my own schedule because that first job was completely commission-based. So now I have a consistent paycheck and I can let them know when I want to work. Well, then you have a manager jumping down your throat and you've got inconsistent hours and sometimes inconsistent pay based on the people that are needed for certain shifts. And it was a little unpredictable and it was always stressful. So I got into security. Security wound up being a great job because I could work whenever I wanted. There was zero stress because, I'm working at a place where there's nobody that's causing any issues. And the pay was pretty good. But I wound up working only a couple days a week at that job because I wasn't being held accountable by that job. And so I would throw in maybe 2-3 days a week, do music for the rest of the week, but I never had enough money to actually invest into my brand, to actually invest into my craft. Tired Boy Productions was a great option. And then I could automate that. I could throw people into that. And I still run Tired Boy Productions to this day. And that was Tired Boy Productions is a great source of income for me. But I mostly offload the jobs off to solo contractors that are either shooting or editing for projects. And then from there, that brings in a significant amount of money, but I still wanted a solid. And that's something that would help me more with the schedule. So I'm not working at 2 a.m. to 4, or, I'm not, sometimes there's a good season, sometimes there's a slow season. You're not relying on that. There's not that unpredictability. So that's when I got into B2B tech. And then from there, I'm making my own schedule. I can work it anywhere on the globe. I'm good at the job. It's very natural for me. I had to go through a bunch of different jobs to find the one that I actually like. I'm excited about going to work every day. And music doesn't suffer. Like I said, I'm doing the biggest things I've ever done in music in my life these days. And it's a consequence of me having the proper setup. Everything works. I get up at the same time. I do my work. I have my music. I do my content. I go to my events or I go to my studio session, and it's like clockwork. I've got my Sundays to myself where I write my stuff out, and my whole schedule is ironclad. But you got to understand that came from nothing, absolutely nothing. It came from East Coast, living below poverty level, not knowing anything about the music industry. That took me going to Toronto, to Boston, to Los Angeles, to New York, to all these different places, to moving back to Toronto, to working 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different jobs. At one point, I did landscaping too. I probably worked up to 12 different jobs before I found that right one. And it probably won't take that long for a lot of people. They may have better balance than I do, but that was what I needed. And so the check-ins, always the check-ins, that's what got me there. And I started from a place where nothing was working, but I would isolate. What do I need? Let's be very realistic. What exactly do I need? I'm imagining myself like I'm my own manager, being very realistic. Dave is my client. I need him to succeed. What does he need to be the most successful? Does he need to eat ice cream at 2 a.m. to be the most successful? Probably not. Does he need maybe, a show at night to make himself calm down and relax a little bit before bed? Yeah, sure. That's fine. And you can give yourself those breaks. And it's really important to accept yourself as human. You're not a work machine, but at the same time, you're not a lazy slob that just lies around all day and scrolls through Instagram. Where's the balance, and where's your most productive self, and how can you be the happiest, the calmest, and the most productive throughout this entire journey? That for me has always been paramount. And I think for all your listeners, it's going to be very helpful. If I can leave you with one thing, do your check-ins. If you want to do them every day, do them every day. If you want to do them once a week, do them once a week. But time is going to pass either way. So whether you feel stressed out about time or whether you feel like you have 10 years, you're still going to have that check-in where you can say, how are things going this week? Has anything changed? Am I going in the right direction? If I'm not, what do I have to do? Where can I cut some slack? Where do I have to work it up a bit? Be very realistic and realize that if you want to go in the right direction, you have to follow those goals. Cut yourself some slack every once in a while, not too much. Gain your pillars. What are your pillars? Is it your family? Is it your religion? Is it your spiritual practices? Is it your meditation? Is it your friends? Is it what you're thankful for? Is that what holds you down? What is it? Your dog? What is it? Right? It has to be something for you. Find out what that is. Find your solidity. Allow for these things to come in that warm water. They'll swim towards you. It will come. And once you get to that point, sky's the limit. I'm living proof. I'm on the other side now, and I'm still growing. Whitley, I know you can say a lot of the same with the life that you've lived so far and the success that you're having. I see it. And these, to me, are some of the most valuable lessons.
Really recap everything for the audience here. Dave touched on a lot of really great things today. And I'm gonna definitely recommend that you go back and watch through this episode, because some of the things, because he shared so many good things in here. And so it's definitely one of those episodes where you can go back and find some other hidden things that were shared. But, ultimately creating a solid foundation for yourself, really building your character, allowing yourself to be open to opportunities, getting yourself a mentor in the area of where you want to grow, doing your homework, and the power of those weekly check-ins. I 100% agree with you on that, Dave. I do this I'm definitely weekly, but if not weekly, it's daily. So every morning I have my power hour where I'm sitting down, I'm journaling, I'm checking in with myself, I'm being still. Like, you have to have that time to really cultivate that inner power within you. And when you take the time to cultivate that, like you said, the sky is the limit. You are unshakable. You are unstoppable, right? So many amazing things. Oh my goodness. I just want to like keep talking and talking and talking, but I know that you have places to be, and just want to also share with our audience today where they can find you. So I'm going to be including Dave's socials down below in the description box so that you can connect with Dave, hear his music. Oh my gosh, yo, you're talking about trying to find your place as an artist, right? Trying to find your what was it? Your flavor, you know, how your unique way of creating music. And I'm telling you guys, it's fire. So good, so good. I've listened to his stuff and it's so good. And you do have like you have a uniqueness about how you make music, Dave. And so, you know, just kudos to you for being able to find that. I think that's huge when anyone is trying to step into their calling. You do have to find your unique flow, right? Yeah, no matter whatever it is that you're doing, everybody has their own talents and gifts, and it's about trying different things, experimenting and exploring and giving yourself that time. It is a marathon, guys. It isn't a sprint. So, and then to just also touch on what Dave said, be gentle with yourself. Like at the end of the day, you're human. We're all human, right? We're not machines. And there are going to be times where we make mistakes, you know, we mess up, or we do things that maybe we, you know, kind of feel bad about afterwards, but like allow yourself to just move past it, move on, and just be gentle with yourself, right? Dave, this has been an absolute pleasure. I feel like we need to do a part 2 sometime.
Look, I really appreciate it. It's been so much fun. Always game for part 2. I feel like you and I could talk for days, but it's been fun while it lasted for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for joining us today and sharing all of your amazing experience and incredible wisdom with our viewers today. With that, guys, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Be sure to check out Dave. I will be including his socials below. And with that, we'll see you next week. Bye for now.